O Partido Conservador tem andado afastado das comunidades imigrantes do Canadá, mas quer mudar essa tendência. Palavras de Erin O'Toole. O recém-eleito líder conservador deu a sua primeira conferência de imprensa étnico-cultural. Vários mídia comunitários estiveram presentes, incluindo o Correio da Manhã, Canadá. Acompanhe.
This is my first press conference with the ethno-cultural media as leader of the Conservative Party. It's a little later than I might have expected because my family had to isolate when we had COVID-19. So I wish nothing but health and wellness to you and your family. I want to thank all of you for joining this press conference today and for continuing to objectively cover Conservative announcements and our work in the House of Commons. I know how hard this year has been for all of you and for, frankly, all small businesses across our country. Your work is essential to so many people who rely on your outlets for information and COVID-related updates. I know many of you covered the Conservative leadership race, but I want to once again share some important messages with you that I have touched upon in my victory speech and in my media appearances since. On election night, I was given a clear mission: to unite our Conservative Party, to champion our Conservative principles, to show Canadians what we know so well, that Justin Trudeau and his team are failing our great country. Our Conservative team will continue to point out Liberal failings and corruption, but we will also show Canadians our vision for a stronger, prosperous, and more united Canada. Canada can and must do better, and Conservatives will work hard to earn the trust and confidence of Canadians in the next election. I promise Canadians that they will be seeing and hearing a lot from me in the coming weeks. And I want to repeat that, and I want to talk to everyone about what I'm here to do. And that's to fight for Canadians and their families. For those of you whom I haven't met previously, I want to introduce myself and tell you more about who I am and what inspired me to get involved in politics and public service. After high school, I joined the military to gain discipline and to serve our country. It deepened my love for Canada, and it really defines who I am today. I served as a navigator on Sea King helicopters and sailed with our Navy out of Halifax, but I trained and lived across this great country while I was in the Canadian Armed Forces. But it was in Halifax where I met Rebecca, the love of my life. Today, Rebecca and I are both navigators, navigating raising our amazing children, Molly and Jack, and all the pleasures and demands of public life. I've spent my entire adult life trying to serve Canada and its people. Soon, I will be asking Canadians for the opportunity to serve as Prime Minister so we can get our country back on track. I love this country, and I'm very worried about the course we're on. I believe that Canada needs a leader with real-world experience and someone who is not afraid to make the tough decisions. A leader who cares more about keeping Canadians safe and united than about his personal interest, his personal image, and his friends. Since I took over as the new Conservative Party leader, we've had a shadow cabinet reshuffle. We've strengthened our team with the best talent we have in our caucus. We will use our strengthened opposition to advocate for human rights and the rule of law at home and abroad. We will continue to expose Trudeau's ethical scandals and show Canadians the true face of his government. We will continue to be strong advocates for principled foreign policy. And we will also show everyone that our party is inclusive, and we will invite more Canadians to join it. As I said previously, whether you are black, white, brown, or from any race or creed, whether you are LGBTQ or straight, whether you are an Indigenous Canadian or have joined the Canadian family 5 weeks ago or 5 generations ago, whether you're doing well or barely getting by, whether you worship on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, or not at all, you are an important part of Canada, and you have a home in the Conservative Party of Canada. And I really mean that. Canada's Conservatives have always championed multiculturalism and inclusion. We might not have always been successful in communicating this, but it remains a fact and principle. And today I'm joining you to show that we are open for dialogue and we want you to be part of our shared success story. Thank you once again for the work you're doing by informing your communities and keeping them up to date on the developments in our country and around the world. I now look forward to answering some of your questions, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Leader. And our first question is from Srini from Kalapan Tamil TV. Srini, you've got 30 seconds to ask the question, and it's the grassroots question. You're on.
Thank you for Erin O'Toole to become a leader of our party. I was a grassroots member of our party. And my first question is, what is your message and your advice for the CPC candidate and the CPC support win the next election, majority of 170 seats, and holding the strong conservative value?
Thank you, Srini. And as I said in my remarks, I want to leverage our principles as a conservative party. We believe in safe communities. We believe in working hard and having success. So their values are often reflected in the values of the Conservative Party. And I want more new Canadians, first and second generation, to see a conservative staring back at them in the mirror each morning. And part of this is going to be reaching out, building policies that speak to more and more Canadians. And it's 2020. I want our party to be fielding candidates that look like Canada of 2020. So we're already having great progress. We've got hundreds of people reaching out, wanting to run for our party. We are promoting the ability for more people to get engaged in the Conservative Party. So I'm very excited that we're going to be building great bridges to more and more Canadians in the next election.
Thank you, Srini, and thank you, Leader. And our next question is from Bala Menon from Voice Media Group, and it's a question on Indo-Pacific region. Bala?
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Do you think Canada should take a more active interest in the Indo-Pacific region and in the security challenges of that area? The Pacific is very important for us.
Thank you, Bala. I absolutely do. And in my first speech in Parliament, my response to the speech from the throne, I mentioned the need for Canada to do more in the Indo-Pacific, more trade, more diplomatic partnerships, more security partnerships. And what's great, Bala, is the most feedback I heard from the diplomatic community with respect to my speech was my vision for Canada being a more engaged Pacific nation and deepening our ties in the Indo-Pacific. There is such tremendous potential to restore the trade growth that Canada and India were enjoying under the Conservative time in government. We literally doubled trade between Canada and India during that period. And we all saw how Mr. Trudeau, through a disastrous state visit, not only hurt the person-to-person relationship, we hurt our trade interests. And there were tariffs applied on lentils. There's been a weakening of what was a very strong relationship. And everyone knows I've taken a very principled position with respect to the Communist Party and Beijing and China in recent years. We need to do more with India, the world's largest democracy and a Commonwealth ally with a huge Indo-Canadian diaspora in Canada that helps us leverage opportunities in that country. We need to do more, particularly as we're rebalancing some of our reliance on China. And then the security, we've seen some of the security issues spill over between China and India just in the last few months. So I would like to see Canada's orientation pivot more to Indo-Pacific, both from trade, diplomacy, aid, military and security cooperation. I think there's a lot we can do. And I'm always impressed by members, particularly of the Indo-Canadian diaspora, how many person-to-person relations there are that could lead to trade and investment opportunities. So it will be a key priority for our Conservative government.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you. And our next question is from Becky Zhou from the Epoch Times, and it's the question on Chinese communist regime influence in Canada. Becky, you're on.
How to help Canadians differentiate Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party? And as we hold CCP accountable during the pandemic, Chinese Canadians from discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and you've raised a very important point, and I've raised this many times, including during the leadership race and since I've become leader. We need to make sure that Canada's principled position with respect to the Communist Party in Beijing does not influence how Canadians, how Chinese Canadians or people with Chinese origins are treated in Canada. We've seen a rise in discrimination, and it's up to public officials like myself and others to speak out forcefully against that, because we have no issue with China. We have no issue with the Chinese people, whether in mainland China or around the world. Our problem is with an ideology that suppresses liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, which doesn't respect the rule of law, whether it's the one country, two systems agreements, whether it's WTO and trade, that is perpetrating re-education and internment of a religious minority, the Uyghurs in Western China, and some of the ambitions in the South China Sea. Those are all the offshoots of the communist ideology. And so what we have to do is to be very careful to say our issue is of a political nature, and many, if not the vast majority, of Chinese Canadians came to our country to flee that oppression. So I think this is something, Becky, I'm going to have to always be making sure we talk about. And I talked a lot about this in the GTA and in the lower mainland of BC in particular, when I was able to travel in the leadership race. Our issue is with communism and an ideology. It isn't with a people.
The next question is from Correio de Manhã, Teresa Lancaster. Teresa, you're on with your question about issues that affect immigrants.
Thank you, and nice to meet you, Mr. O'Toole. So what main issues affecting the immigrant communities in Canada is the Conservative Party most focused on?
Thank you, Teresa. There's been a lot of disruption in the pandemic to our immigration system. A lot of families have been kept apart. We've seen a virtual halt to all family reunifications, even cases where adopted babies can't be brought to be with their parents. And the Conservatives, we've been pushing for more compassion with the Liberals in this process. It angered me and our caucus that the Liberals were allowing US billionaires to fly in and out of Canada on their private jet, but were not reuniting families when the families could easily quarantine and everyone could observe public health guidelines. So we've been pushing to speed up some of the halt in our immigration system. I've also spoken about how we need to do more in terms of family reunification, because that can allow more Canadians to have flexibility in their home with respect to children or aged parents. We want to see the ability for parents to be able to work, to juggle childcare if there's a closure of daycare centers. We know that some seniors can't go to long-term care with some of the issues happening. The more family supports that a family has, the more that they can accommodate the needs of their children and even their aged parents. And I think we need to pivot and have more family reunification to help solve some of those public policy needs that are a direct result of the pandemic. So I've been talking about this for the last few months. Once again, we've seen under Mr. Trudeau, we've seen every single wait time dramatically go up for everything from family reunification, skills immigration, refugee processing. We've seen no respect for a rules-based, compassionate system. That is what we will try and instill as a conservative government, and we will put a real focus on expediting particularly family reunification that can help during these uncertain times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Our next question is from Naveed from Channel Toronto 360, and that's a question about Muslim community. Naveed, you're on.
Thank you, Erin. It is great to hear about your opening statement, which actually I heard very loud and clear where you stand. But over the course of last few years, and if you can see our previous conservative government, Muslims are always felt they're feeling that the conservatives are not treating them fairly. And that's why the other parties like Liberal Party is so in with our community, and then they're just gaining more momentum and more of their support from that community. Being another Muslim community member, my question is that what are you going to do to resolve all those issues which Muslim community is feeling that conservatives are not favoring them? Because we need a conservative party support very heavily.
Well, thank you, Naveed. And first off, I would like to pass along my solidarity and my thoughts to the Muslim Canadian community on the horrific threat against a mosque in the GTA, following on a few weeks ago the terrible murder of a member of one of the mosques. That type of hate is horrific to see in our country, and we stand with the community, and we'll do whatever we can to condemn and break up these hate networks. It's atrocious. And you've raised a good point. I said in my remarks, we have not always been able to connect and build trust with all new Canadian communities or growing communities that are having an important role in the future of our country. And I want to change that. I'm very proud that my leadership campaign was chaired by a prominent Muslim Canadian lawyer from Toronto who's been my friend for over 2 decades. And I had a campaign team that had a cross-section of what I said in my remarks, people with all different backgrounds from a faith, cultural, ethnic perspective. We had members of all communities united in a principled approach to get Canada back on track. And I hear from the Muslim community in my own riding of Durham, when I've gone to Friday prayers and met with members of the mosque afterwards, that there's a sense that they haven't always felt welcome in our party, is how I would put it at a basic level. Well, I am saying you are welcome. As leader, the first words out of my mouth was, I want to grow this party, and I want more Canadians, including Muslim Canadians, to see a conservative staring back at them in the mirror in the morning when they're getting up each day. Because you know what? Whether it's small business owners, whether it's the right for someone to bring their faith or their cultural practice to public life, to politics, whether it's the ability to have safe communities, to work hard and have success. We want that. And I think nothing shows the hypocrisy of Mr. Trudeau more than last week when I asked him to support the nomination of Senator O'Toole to be the first Canadian president of the International Parliamentary Union, a very big organization of all the parliaments of the democratic world. It would have been not only the first Canadian, it would have been the first woman, and it would have been the first Muslim Canadian to be put up for a body like that. And Trudeau, despite always saying diversity is our strength and calling himself a feminist, would not support Salma's application, even though some of his own Liberal MPs are. The reason why is because she's a conservative. So Mr. Trudeau talks a good game. You're going to see me on the ground reaching out and growing our party.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Before I turn it to the leader for the final closing remarks, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for submitting all your questions. I know not all of you, we did not have a chance to ask all the questions, but please do stay tuned. This is not the last time that we're doing this, and we will be in touch with you in the future. And thanks again, and over to the leader for the final word.
Well, thanks, Anton, for moderating, and thanks to everyone on this call today. I'll end as I started. I want to send best wishes of health and strength to you and your families, and to your readers, your listeners, your viewers. You are an important link to many communities in this country, and I want you to be a way that we can connect with more and more Canadians. I also know that your industry has suffered under COVID, as we've seen many. That's why I've been calling for a modernization of media in Canada, not billions just sent of taxpayers' money to the CBC, who then compete with you online and in other places. I want to shake up the landscape to recognize and help what you're doing. So stay tuned on that, because we value the role that you're bringing to millions of Canadians. And as I said throughout my remarks today, my goal is to make sure more Canadians see themselves comfortably in the conservative movement, because they agree with us on where we think we need to go to have strong communities, strong opportunities to work and provide to your kids. We can't have hundreds of billions of dollars of uncontrolled spending forever, or we will not have the health care and the old age security and pensions that we all rely upon. And I look forward to chatting with you, answering more questions, and hopefully getting to see some of you in person soon. But once again, thank you for the opportunity today.